Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, the teacher with the demon, and with me is Nathan Fox, one of the founders of LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Nate, our email today is from Andre, who's asking about RC variance.
Short answer is that variance is your friend. I mean, without reading your email, Andre, I'm going to tell you that we can't really minimize variance. We can only embrace variance because law schools only care about our highest score. Students are always worried about variance, and I just don't care. What I care about is your accuracy on your questions attempted. But I'll read Andre's email. He says, "Hello, I've been using the LSAT Demon since January and have primarily been focusing on LR since it was my weakness in my cold diagnostic practice test, which was a 138. Totally normal cold diagnostic, by the way. I am now scoring consistently in the low to high 150s.
So just the 150s?
So the 150s. And have turned LR into my stronger section of the test. I now score between 19 to 22 questions right on LR with 90 to 100% accuracy. Nice.
That's a big improvement.
It's a huge improvement. No, I mean, You've improved by, if you're at 155, you've improved by 17 points. I mean, that's, nice.
Well done.
Time well spent. You changed your life already, but there's still room for improvement. You could change your life again from there. Sounds like you're going to need to work on reading comp, but let's see. Andre continues. I don't put nearly as much time into RC as I do in LR, but I have seen slight improvements. The RC section variance on either, you mean both, PTs and regular timed.
I think he means timed sections.
Okay, so RC variance on full-time tests or just time sections of RC is insane. Some sections I'll get 20 right, and other sections I will get 9 right, a much bigger variance than in LR.
Something tells me that he's probably still attempting 20, though, on the ones that he gets 9
Yeah,
right.
He's not reporting accuracy. He reported accuracy on his LR because it's 90 to 100%.
Right. He's not only doing 9 questions because that's all he has time for. Yes.
He's doing... Okay. He's obviously doing 3 passages.
Yep.
And sometimes he aces it, and sometimes he very does not ace it. He says, I feel like I'm regressing when I get such low numbers. My RC sections on PTs are the only thing that makes my recent PT scores vary so widely. What am I doing wrong here? Please help me. Thanks, Andre. Andre, it's clear. You're worried about variance, but your real problem is accuracy. You're just not accurate enough on the questions that you're attempting. Easy fix. Don't attempt so many questions. You're not wisely investing your time. You are not going to finish the section on reading comp. Not today. Probably not tomorrow. Maybe eventually, but no time in the near future should you be even considering the possibility of finishing your section on reading comp. If your range is between 9 and 20, I think you should be doing, your goal right now should be 2 perfect passages. Because 2 perfect passages plus random guesses, we could do the math on this. Let's say there's 13 questions in the first 2 passages. If you get all those right, and then you just randomly guess on the remaining 14 questions.
Say 15 to make it 3 to be nice, right?
Okay, if there's 28, there's not usually 28 questions in the section, though. It's usually 27. So anyway, it's roughly, you're going to get roughly 3 guesses right, So you got 13 in the bank from the questions you actually did, plus round 3 for your random guesses. You're now at 16 right. And that should be sustainable, right? There's going to be variance on your guesses, but there's not going to be that much variance on your guesses because you're only going to get 1 out of 5 right in the long run. So there's just not that room you're not going to get wildly lucky. It's just vanishingly unlikely that you're going to get wildly lucky. Sometimes you're going to get a little unlucky. Sometimes you're going to get a little lucky, but it's not going to matter that much. But you'll never have 9 correct because you're going to do 2 perfect passages. And what you don't realize now, Andre, is that it is possible to just do perfect work on reading comp. There's 1 right answer. There are 4 wrong answers. The wrong answers are just misrepresenting the passage, or they're not answering the question that was asked about the passage. The right answers, they have support in the passage. They are actually answering the question that you were asked about that passage, and the wrong answers are wrong. So this is, I guess, a way to clean up your variance, but it's not your variance that I'm worried about. It's your average poor accuracy.
The other thing I would be willing to bet is that when Andre slows down and only does 2 passages, and I see it all the time with students, he's probably going to feel like an I don't even know what I'm doing with my time kind of thing. And the mistake that I see students make is that they will go through and they'll read the passage quickly. They'll get to the answer choices, and then they'll try and spend a lot of time like excavating the answers out of the passage. They'll go back, they'll look for things, they'll reread, and by the time they're done, they've reread the entire passage almost.
Yeah.
Trying to find the answer and searching for that answer.
Yeah.
That's the wrong attitude.
Right.
The attitude you should be taking is that by the time you're done reading the passage, you feel like an expert in that material. And then you are prepared to answer 5 to 8 questions on that material.
Yeah, and I think you should be predicting the answer to about half of the questions on reading comprehension. You should really only be going back to the passage on like maybe 25% of the questions on reading comprehension.
I don't even think it's that high.
Yeah, because
it's you also have even the ones that say the first sentence in the first sentence of the second paragraph, they'll sometimes quote that in there. They'll say, "Oh yeah, the sentence da 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 da," and you should know then, without going back, what that answer is going to be.
You should know why they said it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you do need to go back to the passage to read the context. Like, okay, I remember they said this, but what did they say around that? Because frequently the correct answer comes from the context that was around that part, not the actual part itself. But yeah, when you see a student who has to go back to the passage for every question, no, like, especially like the main point question, really? If you can't tell me what the main point of the passage is, or if you can't, I mean, the correct answer doesn't have to be in the same words that you would have predicted.
Right.
If you don't find 1 right answer and 4 wrong answers to the main point question without going back to the passage, then yeah, you did not become an expert in that passage. I want to just clarify one thing that you said. When we say become an expert, we don't mean become an expert in the topic.
Right.
We mean become an expert in that document.
Yes.
Like you know what's there. Now you haven't memorized it, but you've read it well enough that you've thought it through. Like you've actually engaged with it and thought about not just what it says, but like, what's it mean? And what does it not mean? And what, like what's around the edges of what's there. Then when you go answer a question and they're like, okay, what did it say? There's just one answer that they actually said. And there's 4 answers that they did not say. And you shouldn't have to go back to the passage to prove it to yourself that they said something that they definitely said. Mm-hmm. Right.
It's funny, Nate. I had a meeting for just like some pre-law stuff before I start in the fall. Yep. And one of the advisors was talking about the part that they found interesting in transactional work was that the answers in contracts oftentimes didn't lie because he said you can't just read a contract and see the answer to everything in the bullet points. It's oftentimes how those points interact with each other. And he said that and I thought, well, there's a skill. There's an RC skill that you learn. It's how do those points interact with each other, and that doesn't require a memerization of everything. No. But you should be making those connections as you are reading before you ever make it to the answer choices. When you see something that goes, talking about this, like, well, how do those 2 things interact with each other? Yeah. What are the not logical conclusions from that? Because I guarantee you that's where they're going to ask you those questions.
No, the LSAT is smartly designed to test very lawyerly skills.
Yes.
And, they fall all over themselves to say that the LSAT is not an aptitude test, which, it can be practiced and it can be learned. So to the extent that, and there are other factors as well.
Sure.
But like you say, Josh, they are testing your ability to read documents, to understand what's there, and to think it through. Mm-hmm. Not just what they're saying, but what they're saying in the context of everything else they're saying. And to maybe think through, maybe this comes more in logical reasoning. And in logical reasoning, it's like, well, okay, what's your conclusion? What's your evidence? Do I really have to buy that conclusion? Or could there be all kinds of other things? I have that same kind of discussion going on, though, when I'm doing reading comp. It's like, oh, you're trying to convince me of this. Why are you trying to convince me of that? And then I'm thinking like, oh, but I wonder what they think about this. I wonder what they're thinking about that. And sure enough, half the time that like comes up later in the passage which it's a critical reading comprehension skill. You get better and better at reading the passages the more you think about them while you're reading them. So, Andre, I want you to slow down. I don't want you to slow down just for the sake of slowing down. I want you to slow down for the sake of accuracy. I want you specifically to slow down while you're reading the passage. And even more specifically, I want you to think not just about what they've said, but why they're saying it and what it means in the context of the other stuff that they're saying. And I want you to be building better understanding of the passage as you're reading the passage. If you can learn to do this, you're not going to miss questions. Like, the questions are going to get easier and easier. And so your goal for today is to see if you can just start doing 2 perfect passages, randomly guess on everything else. If you can do 2 perfect passages, then you can start working on a 3rd passage. And maybe you start getting to a place where you're doing 3 perfect passages and guessing on the 4th passage. But once you've made it to that point, Andre, you're already above the high end of where you currently are today. Because right now you're saying 9 to 20 correct. Well, 3 perfect passages is going to be like 20 or 21 correct.
Plus a guess on the 4th passage.
Yeah, a guess on the 4th passage. And so you're like, what are you doing? You're doing less work, but you're getting paid more for that work. That's where we need to go, Andre.
Thanks for writing in, Andre. Hope this helps. Let us know how it goes. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.